folks, Captain Mike here from Hogy Lure Company. Just want to take a minute to debrief on one of my favorite tuna casting videos we've ever done. Now, this was a situation where we caught fish two ways. So we're going to break these Hogy how-tos into two parts. So part one, we're going to talk about using a big slider in a textbook example of leading a school of breaking fish. So the tuna we get here at Hogy HQ on Cape Cod, they range widely, anywhere from the little 30 to 40 pound footballs all the way up to 72-inch plus fish that you might regret hooking on a tuna outfit. But either way, I like to be ready for that wide range. And so my go-to outfit is a 7-foot medium heavy to heavy spinning outfit. Here I have the Hogy tuna spinning rod. And this rod sort of embodies what I like in an outfit. For starters, it has a shorter butt section because I like to fight a fish off my hip with no belt when I'm fighting a spinning rod. Helps with my rod angle. I use my core muscle so I can pump and fish. It's very ergonomic when I'm boat side. I'm not caught up in the belt. I like a longer foregrip so I can change my arms to use different muscle groups throughout the battle, I should say. Now, this outfit is fairly parabolic and on the softer end of the equation, so that's going to give me a wide range of lures I can cast in terms of weight. You know, sometimes you want to go down as little as 2 ounces, sometimes you want to go up to 6 ounces. So this rod, a fairly parabolic rod, is very forgiving on the casting front, but it's also forgiving on the angler during the battle. You know, as you get a little older and tireder like me, having a rod that's a little softer and a little more forgiving on a big run of the fish tires me out just a little bit less, and so it's a good outfit. It's a good overall outfit for that wide range of fish. Now the reel I have here is a Stella 18,000. This doesn't need to be a Stella per se, but this 18,000 size reel spooled with 80 to 100 pound test braid is the perfect reel size. Now you can go two ways with your leader, either a wind-on loop-to-loop connection, or here I have an FG knot. Typically, if they're smaller fish, I'll use 80-pound test fluoro, but if they're starting to get a little bigger, say closer to that 70-inch mark, I'll go up to 100-pound test fluoro, and sometimes even up to 130 if they're hot and heavy or very large that day. Now, lastly, you'll see how I have this slider connected to the rod. I always recommend connecting with a small barrel swivel and a split ring. That way it allows for easy lure swap out. It's nice to have a versatile rod that can do well in just about all situations. And, you know, like I said, this is my go-to. So in the shoot today, there was massive amounts of sand eels on the surface getting corralled by the tuna and almost too much bait. So you have kind of two options in this scenario. One is to go small and match the hatch, and number two is to go large and sort of stand out, be highly visible. And I tend to err on the go large strategy, you know, for no other reason, where you have greater visibility. And so a lot of times you can't get to the fish that are feeding, but you can get to, you know, tuna that might be adjacent to the area. But either way, when you're leading a school of fish coming up, when you want to, you know, lead them and get in front of them, cast them, a highly visible big plug is going to get seen from a greater distance. So I'm effectively extending the range of my cast by being highly visible. Now, the second thing I'm going to mention is this is the 6-ounce version Hogy slider that we make. There are a lot of birds, a lot of shearwaters, which are aggressive. They want to grab your lure too. This 6-ounce lure will sink out of their range more times than not, so it gives you a little extra advantage if you're trying to avoid the birds that are being, you know, particularly aggressive like they were on this very shoot. Lastly, I want to mention about the 6-ounce slider is its extended casting range and accuracy at those long casts. The lure is carefully weighted for long casts and turnkey built-in swimming action. And the lure's through wired, so if you get the big one, you're good to go with this lure. talk about the approaching a school. So you see fish on the finder. Sometimes it's clear because you can see them jumping. Other times it's a little more nuanced and you can see them swimming. But either way, best practice is to get in front of the school. So in a perfect scenario, I want to be a touch upwind, so I am casting downwind. I have the wind aiding my cast. And so picture the school traveling in one direction. I want my lure to be on the other side, and I want that intersection where it's a chance meeting between the lead fish and my plug. And that's ideal. That's how it would happen in nature. If you were to cast over the fish or behind the fish, that's not natural. That could spook the fish and they all can take off. Now, if they're hot and heavy and eating anything, it can matter less. But in more finesse situations like today in greasy calm water, you want to do it just right so you don't spook the fish. They can see the line. Anything can disturb the fish, and you don't want to run up, charge up. You want to give them their space and let them come to you. So you want to study their patterns, study their movements, get upwind, cast, chance encounter, and that's how you get the fish when the going's a little tough and you need to get everything right. Let's talk tells. Tells are very important, and they're a little, for the most part today, they've been a little more subtle. And obviously, if you see crashing fish, vortexing birds, that's not so much of a tell as a billboard saying, come here. But today, in between feeds, the fish are moving around, and so you want to study the water, look for nervous water, birds circling way up high in the sky, birds sitting, reluctant to move. You want to study every little unique wave that looks funny, because a lot of times you'll see a little patch of what I call nervous water. It just looks disturbed. If you look more closely with polarized lenses, you'll see there's just fish slow cruising, and that's where you want to intercept them and lead them and bring the fish across. So let's talk about retrieves. Now, there's 3 primary retrieves to fishing these big sliders, and the beauty of the big slider is it's going to swim on its own no matter what you do. You're really more focused on the speed of the lure. So my favorite retrieve is the start and stop or the reel and pause. It's called a number of different things, but either way, you cast out, I'll let the lure sink, sometimes to get away from the birds. I'll let it sink for a bit. I'll burn it, it'll come up to the surface, then I'll pause, then I'm gonna let that lure sink. Now the lure is uniformly weighted, so it's gonna have a natural horizontal descent in the water. And so I'll reel, pause, reel, pause. Number 2 is just a steady retrieve, just a medium to fast crank, and just crank, 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 crank. That lure's just gonna wobble all the way in. That's a good search pattern retrieve because you can cover a lot of ground, cast, 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 cast. And the last one is the slow and low, and that's when you cast out, let it sink, you can just keep your tip pointed to the water and just a real slow retrieve. Now I'll mix and match between those. Sometimes they're really keyed in on one retrieve over the other, but if I mix and match, I know I'm gonna cover the spectrum. So the hookup, these hooks that come standard rigged on the Hogy slider, the VMC Tropic Star hooks, you can almost cut your eye just by looking at these hooks, they're so sharp. So if you get a hit and you immediately get line running, this fish is pretty much just gonna hook itself just from the pressure of running off of the fish. But if you get a hit and it swims towards you, you wanna be ready to crank down on that fish to get that slack out of the line. Sometimes if I'm at the bow, I'll even walk backwards down the length of the boat to help shorten that connection between the loose slack line and the fish. Because the second, you're not gonna hook that fish till that line is tight. So let's talk landing these fish. Obviously, best practice, you want to have the boat downwind of the fish so you don't drift over it at boat side. And so the fish is upwind, you're downwind, and you're sort of drifting together. Other way around, you'll drift down on the fish. Obviously, you want to do a headshot with a gaff. You wait till the timing's right, gaff the fish, get it landed boat side. Now, when I'm done keeping fish, one thing I do, the first thing I do is take the aft hook off this plug and mash the barbs down. That'll facilitate a much better release, and in all honesty, I don't know if my hookup and landing ratio changes all that much with just the single hook versus the two standard out of the package.